Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, everyone. This is Shanti Kumaraswamy Street, your business English coach here at English with a Twist, also known as EWAT. And today you are watching lesson 57 of the regular Wednesdays with EWAT series. I hope you're all well. We're now live. It is exactly 3 p.m. UK time, and you find me in the middle of, not literally, but in the middle of our coldest week in the UK, and also in the middle of the most snow we've had in the last 5 years. So it's super exciting, actually, more for my husband and my dog than for me, because I do have a phobia or a fear of ice and snow. Not so much snow, but ice. So I am more someone for sun and sea as opposed to snow and mountains and ice. But yes, it's super cold. We have this this blast. They call it the Siberian blast, and that's come across whole of the continent of Europe, and it's come across to the British Isles. So we have it's super cold. But you know, I'm nice and warm in here, so perfect conditions for me to have today's class. So lesson 57. How is everyone doing on this Wednesday, the 28th of February? I'm going to say this every time we come to the end of a month, but can you believe it? We are already at the end of the second month of 2018. Don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure as I'm getting older, time seems to be going super fast. So I am really a bit concerned here. But there you go. I see Rosie is watching. Gabi, hi. Hello, Argentina. And I hope you're well. I hope Argentina is a lot warmer. You will be because you're in the southern hemisphere. So are you in, is it warm where you are? Is it hot? Could you pass some warmth to us? I shared some wintry photos on my family's WhatsApp group, and my father said to me, "Oh, it's lovely. Could you pass some cold air to us?" Because my father and my brother, they live in Malaysia where it's very warm. So, you know, so we're having a good exchange of weather. Okay, enough of talking weather in terms of talking about temperatures. We need to be focusing on today's lesson. But as I say, so 28th of February, how have your first 2 months of the year been for you? Has it been very productive? We talked about the month of January, where, you know, everyone starts off with their New Year's resolutions and they start working on those. And then you come into February, and February, I don't know, it's still sort of, we're still testing the waters as to what is going on with our business, with our lives, our goals. So if you've been following the whole of February, then you know that the theme we've been covering has been very much on the concept of time, and looking at time management, looking at how we manage our time, how we manage to fit in time for ourselves, and how we manage to fit some time in for your business English, and how to develop that. So I'm just stopping here because I'm looking at Rosie's asked me, why am I concerned? Concerned about what? Not too sure. Gabi, you're saying it's really hot. Yeah, it's quite hot in Buenos Aires. Right. Okay. And Path, yes, you agree with me that time is passing a bit too quickly, isn't it? A bit too fast for my liking. Yes. So, you know, the expression that people say, and I'm sure you have it in your own language, that we need to seize the moment, seize the day, and take advantage of every time we have. Seize the day comes from, of course, the Latin carpe diem, is to grab the day and make it the most of what you can. Anna, you're saying in Poland, it is not we have, quick correction, it is minus 12 degrees centigrade. Okay, people, that is super cold. Yeah, so it's actually minus 12, because here we're looking at minus 3, but it feels like minus 9 because we have the wind chill factor. Brr, I think I prefer to be here actually, but thanks Anna for sharing. That seems super cold. So, but stay warm on that. Now, I'm just going to refresh the Facebook page. So what are we looking at today? Today we are end of February, so we're still talking about my theme on time, talking about time management. What is that concept of time? How do we manage it as busy business professionals? Because of course, let me all remind you, for the people who know all about this, English with a Twist is where you as a business professional come to share your thoughts, to learn, to develop, to become better communicators, more effective, more confident, and above all, in control of how you communicate in English in business. Yeah, English is just a tool for which you can then be a confident communicator in business. This is what we're all about. And if you haven't joined the EWAT community yet, I would strongly recommend that you do so by signing up, going first to my page, englishwithatwist.com, and signing up to join the fast expanding EWAT community. So I'd love it, so we can continue the conversation there. Now, as I say, we're going to be heading into March tomorrow. Tomorrow starts with St. David's Day. So my husband's name is David. St. David is the patron saint of Wales, and I'm sure of other different countries. I'm sure you can tell me. And of course, his namesake is St. David's. So we'll be celebrating. Well, actually, we won't be celebrating, but I just thought I'd share that with you. Okay, let's start today's class. And what are we going to be talking about today? As I say, we're talking about time. And today I want to share with you vocabulary linked to time. Now, we've looked at time metaphors, but today I want to look at phrasal verbs linked to the concept of time, in particular to time management, and how you can use phrasal verbs when you're discussing time management. Now, for those of you who are members of my EWAT community, you will have received your weekly lesson that I published last Friday, where you will have seen these phrasal verbs that I shared. But in this class, I want to be able to share it with you in terms of me talking about the phrasal verbs in more detail. So does that sound good to you? Looking at phrasal verbs. First of all, let me ask you, how many of you use phrasal verbs when you're communicating English? How many of you find phrasal verbs difficult to learn or to understand? Many of you do. If you're English learners, a lot of you, I have a lot of my clients who've always said to me, "Oh, Shanti, phrasal verbs drive us nuts." Yeah, I think phrasal verbs are quite a unique aspect of the English language. What is a phrasal verb? It's basically a verb with a preposition or an adverb. And we often use them instead of using one word. Instead of saying to surrender, we say, "I give up." Yeah, so instead of saying "I surrender," we'll say "give up." So we'll use that phrasal verb. So it's very frustrating for non-native speakers of English or English learners to think that we have so many of these phrasal verbs. And it can get quite confusing because some phrasal verbs will have different meanings. So the best way to learn phrasal verbs is to learn them in context. And I'm sure I'm not the first to tell you this. I'm sure your teachers, whoever, will have said to you, this is what you need to do to learn phrasal verbs in context. Because that's the only way that you're going to be able to remember them and try and use them. So the two ways you're looking at it, you're absorbing that language and then you're trying to reproduce that language. Phrasal verbs are also very much idiomatic in terms of usage in English. For example, if you take the phrasal verb look into, and we look at, say, for example, I'm looking into the mirror. Look into the mirror, and what do you see? Well, I look into the mirror, it is a literal meaning. So I've got the mirror in front of me and I'm going to look into the mirror. But if I am looking into a subject or I'm going to look into a topic that I'm preparing for a presentation I need to give next week. So say you're giving a presentation on ethical businesses or the environment or wind turbines, I don't know. Now you're going to look into that subject to research it before you give that presentation. So looking into that subject means you're going to research it. So look into is no longer a literal interpretation of the phrasal verb. It is an idiom. So many phrasal verbs that we use in English are idiomatic expressions, and that's what can cause some confusion. Now, a lot of my clients will often say, you know, could I have a list of phrasal verbs? And I'm sure if you're someone who looks up English blogs, like mine or like other people's, you know, you'll have this list of phrasal verbs and people give you a little example, and that's fine. But how are you going to remember them? You're never going to remember them by just looking at that list. You can memorize it. If you're very lucky, you've got a fantastic memory. More often than not, if you're like the average person in the population, then you're not going to be able to remember that. You need to be able to look at that language, experience that language, and the only way is to see that language in context, like all vocabulary, all words, all expressions, all phrases. And phrasal verbs are exactly in the same way. So, you know, you need to look at it in that aspect. Now, this is what I always say to my clients, and I'm going to read it out to you. This is how I say to you, is that you need, as I say, you need to look at it in context. And when it's context, I mean, it will be a topic that you're familiar with. Say you're reading about something about food, or you're reading something to do with a business topic of your interest. It could be retailers, it could be small businesses, startups, or, you know, time management. And in that particular article, there could be a number of phrasal verbs that you're going to find in there. Now, as you're reading that topic, you're going to see those phrasal verbs, because it might be that they're not using they could be using another verb, but instead they've used a phrasal verb, and you're looking at that phrasal verb and think, this is what they mean in the context of this topic. So I like to teach my clients phrasal verbs, and I like to teach you through the blog and through these lessons phrasal verbs under different topics, because they do three things. First of all, they show you that the phrasal verb is very much a normal part of English. You will see this a lot in articles, business news, a lot of magazine articles. There are plenty of phrasal verbs that are used. It also ensures that you don't get too overwhelmed by this list of phrasal verbs, because based on a topic, there are some phrasal verbs that are used. And also it gives you the practice to see those phrasal verbs in the right context, in the correct context. And that's why I very much like using phrasal verbs in that. Now, I've done this before with business meetings. We've looked at, using phrasal verbs in small talk, phrasal verbs over a telephone. There are different things, and I'm sure you've got lots of resources where you've seen this. Having talked about, so this is my introduction to phrasal verbs. So in today's class, because I want to fit this in very much with the theme of February's theme, which was time, the concept of time and time management, I wanted to share with you 16 phrasal verbs that you can use when you're talking about the concept of time, how you manage your time, how you develop, how do you schedule your time, how do you optimize the time that you have. As busy professionals, all my clients, the majority of my clients are busy, very busy business professionals. It is, you have busy lives, you have to, you're not just balancing your work, you've got a lot of commitments with work, you also have family commitments. And then there'll be other things that we want to do. We just said here today that time flies, doesn't it? Time goes very quickly. I mean, I can't believe that we're already in the 28th of February, and I started this month. I'm doing a lot of creative work behind the scenes on my website. I've got a web designer. We're working together on, new packages that I'm putting on. And, I thought, oh, I've got plenty of time here. I've got like 4 weeks, and I planned it all out. And before you know it, it's the end of the month. And you're thinking, oh my goodness. And I need to go back and think, well, have I just wasted all this time, or have I been productive? And I'm sure it is very much the same with yourselves, right? Without realizing, the days go by very quickly, the weeks go by super quickly, and the months. And so you might have set out a goal in mind. You might have thought, right, this is what I plan to do. And you look ahead and you think, oh, I've got plenty of time. But something else comes up, or you're interrupted, or, there are lots of things that can suddenly interrupt that time. And before you know it, the time has gone fast. Maybe you haven't achieved something as quickly as you wanted to. The big challenge for us, of course, is always to say, okay, but have I made the most of my time? All of this month, I have talked about how to make our time as productive. We've talked about the 80-20 rule. We've talked about, fitting in your English into your me time. It's all about that, isn't it? It's all about productivity. How do we manage our time most effectively? And also be proud of our achievements as we go along the way. Exactly today, I was looking at some stuff and I was looking back and I was thinking, have I just wasted a lot of time? No, then I looked back and I thought, well, no, hold on. First week in February, this is what I did. Oh, good. Tick, tick, tick. I did that. 2nd February. Okay, 2nd week, I managed to do that. Okay, so it's not all been unproductive. I have done a lot. It's just sometimes we forget, we lose track of the time that we've spent on something. So therefore, in the same way as we can lose track of time, we can also lose track of our focus and our goals. And that's why it's always so important to at the end of a month, at the end of a week, recap what we've done, what we set out to do at the beginning of the week, at the end of the week. How much did we achieve? Maybe we didn't achieve everything. Chances are we didn't achieve everything, but maybe it's been a good day, maybe not such a good day. And it's a hard job, I think. It's always a work in progress to keep going back and thinking, okay, let's focus on the things we managed to do and what can we do to recuperate that time that we didn't get to finish certain things. And you're constantly having to say, okay, pat my back, I've done well, I've managed to do this, and then keep going for the next thing. So this whole time concept is a real challenge for all of us. And it's something that I don't think any of us will ever solve. But what we end up doing is learning how to deal with it, how to, how to not deal with it, live with it and accept it, and, and keep going and being happy with the little things that we do. That's why I spend my entire time, repeating, saying small steps make a huge difference over a period of time. And I'm constantly having to remind myself the same thing, because I can get carried away and think, oh gosh, I haven't done this, I haven't done that. It's no point. Well, if I didn't start it then, it's no point starting it now. It could be the same with your English. You think, oh, I just haven't done it. Yes, it's always thinking positively, Rosie, and don't put yourselves down. But it's hard, because that sometimes we have good days and bad days, don't we? Sometimes, your creativity is not flowing. And sometimes you think, ugh, this is just so, this is so hard. I mean, I think Monday, for example, I sat down and I was thinking, right, I'm planning my monthly schedule. I normally spend the beginning of a month, the beginning or towards the end of the month to plan for the following month's content schedule. And I thought, oh, this will take me about a couple of hours to 3 hours, researching, doing it. I've got it all in my mind and I've got it down and write it down. And I spent, it took me an entire day. I don't know what I was doing, but I was doing stuff. I mean, I was researching, doing, but I felt really cross with myself because I thought, oh, I've wasted an all day. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, hold on, did you waste it or have you learned a lot of things along the way? So you can turn it around. You can be super negative about it, or you can think, no, I did actually learn a few new things. But the important thing for me was to record it. And this is what I always say to my clients, always record. It's useful to record because our mind tends to forget what we've done. We learn something, we discard it. And then what happens is we forget about it. But if we record it, even if it's just a quick note to say, yeah, you know, you recorded it, and then you go back and think, oh no, oh, this is what I did. Oh, and this is what oh, wow, listen, I've done quite a lot, you know, in the last week or in the last month. Oh, okay, so it hasn't been all such a waste. So, you know, I want you to try that because that's certainly what I do. And I go back through my notes and I think, I've done quite a lot actually. It doesn't feel like it, but it is when you gradually accumulate everything you've done. So that's that cumulative effect that I'm sure you've seen in your work, in your life, in different ways. Okay, so we're talking a lot about time here, and I haven't come to our phrasal verbs yet. But the concept here with the phrasal verbs is using that concept of time management, time being that precious commodity we have, and how do we manage it effectively, and how do we not feel too guilty if we think we've wasted some time. So we have 16, as I said, and what I'm going to do here is I wrote a narrative. Now, for those of you who didn't look at my post or didn't get time to, and I get that because we all have busy lives, I'm going to read my narrative. This little piece I wrote about how I try and manage my time. And in this narrative, there are 16 phrasal verbs. And I'd like you to listen and make a note of the phrasal verbs that refer to the concept of time. So bear in mind, we're talking time. We're talking about time management. I'm not talking about anything else. So I just want you to concentrate. So if you have a pen and paper, pencil and paper next to you, make a note. And we'll then go over those 16 phrasal verbs. Is everyone ready? Can I have a thumbs up from anyone who's engaged in this lesson? Let me see if we're ready to rock and roll with this class. Yeah, you ready to listen? You got pen and paper next to you. And then we can start with the lesson. With the phrasal verbs, with the narrative, not with the lesson, because the lesson has already started. In case you're thinking, really? Oh, wow, wonderful. So is everyone I'm getting lots of thumbs up. I am super key. Oh, good. Thank you, Susan. Hi, Raj from Tamil Nadu in India. Excellent. Okay. Right, and Keiko, hi. So, lovely. Now, let me read out the narrative. Don't worry if you miss things. I will read it again, and then we're going to go through them. Okay, I'm starting. I don't know about you, but I always feel pressed for time. Each day I make a long to-do list, and each day it gets harder and harder to fit everything in to my working day. Things always take longer than I expect, which means I'm always running out of time. For example, I may have set aside 2 hours for a task. Oh yeah, that's what I was talking to you about on Monday. But it inevitably takes more than 2 hours to complete. Oh yes. Now, I have a choice. I can either complete the task or move on to the next item on my to-do list and free up some space later in the day or week to complete the earlier task. Let me repeat that sentence again because I did break that. So, for example, I may have set aside 2 hours for a task, but it inevitably takes more than 2 hours to complete. I have a choice. I can either complete the task or move on to the next item on my to-do list and free up some space later in the day or week to complete the earlier task. In fact, that's what I have started doing, blocking out slots of time for various items and sticking to these time slots. If I've not been able to complete the task in the allotted time, I simply allocate a new time slot for it. Of course, if the task is urgent, for example, I have to prepare for a presentation that's coming up soon, I put back my other tasks and concentrate on this. The key is always to know how to prioritize. In fact, leading up to an important deadline, I always ensure I have spaced out my tasks to give myself sufficient time to meet my deadline. Of course, the trouble with this is that by allocating so much time to one project, I end up falling behind with my other tasks. I then find myself having to catch up with a ton of work, and that means long hours. So much for the work-life balance. I don't mind working long hours for a one-off project. However, if the one-off project becomes a series of projects and the long hours become the norm, I need to rethink how I work. That's when I have to decide how best to manage my schedule. In addition to allocating the time slots to each task, I'll try very hard not to drag out the time I spend on each task. This does mean having to resist perfection. The trouble with perfection is that we can spend hours and days on a task, fine-tuning it, rethinking it, redoing it, without realizing that precious time is slipping away. You may be lucky and have plenty of time to work on something, but I reckon most of us don't have the luxury of endless hours. Certainly not if someone is paying for our time. So the only thing you can do is press on with the job in hand. Hey, how did you do? Were you able to follow that narrative? Did I speak slowly enough for you to pick up on those phrasal verbs? Let me know. Share with me in the chat box before we continue with the next piece of this lesson. So how many phrasal verbs did you listen? Did you hear, not listen, did you hear from this that related to time? Susan, wonderful, you picked 14, so you heard 14 phrasal verbs. Lovely, wonderful. Okay, could you share with me some of those phrasal verbs? Anybody else? How many did you pick? Anyone? So we have 16 in this, so 14 out of 16 is wonderful. Don't forget, you're listening. About a dozen, wonderful. So about 12 path, wonderful, excellent. So all related to time. Great, Susan. So you're writing out, you're sharing with me some of your phrasal verbs. Wonderful. Yeah, please add them to the chat box because so then everyone can see that. Lovely. So, and hopefully that I didn't speak too fast, too quickly. Now, in a normal, great, good one, Keiko, great, Susan, good, and Gabriela, excellent, so 14, yeah, Keiko, lovely, wonderful, so you're picking up the good phrasal verbs you're connected to time, yay, super, Keiko, lovely, yep, wonderful, and Lovely. So great. So lots of good phrasal verbs that have to do with time. Yes, so run out of, set aside, put back, run out of time. Yeah, lovely. So a lot of these phrasal verbs are idiomatic, of course, aren't they? Actually, most of them are idiomatic, used idiomatically in the language, in the piece. Great. Okay, wonderful. So let's have a look at the phrasal verbs that I shared. And wonderful, Keiko. Great. Yeah, guys, you're doing a brilliant job here. And for those of you who are not sharing, have a look. But now I'm going to share with you the phrasal verbs that I had put together and where I included in this narrative. So the first, I'm going to give you the list and then I'm going to go through it again. All right, so the first phrasal verb was pressed for. You're pressed for time. And I'm going to write that in the comments box. So pressed, but I'll be putting this in the show notes. Pressed for, we're pressed for time. When you're pressed for time. Yeah, so pressed for time was the first phrasal verb. The second one, Gabriela, meet a deadline is not a phrasal verb because you got the verb there, but there's no preposition. Or are you telling me that it's what it means? But the next one is fit in. So you're going to, and the second phrasal verb was to fit everything into your schedule. So to fit everything in, to fit in something into your schedule. Yeah, so so the first one was, I don't know about you, but I always feel pressed for time. So what do we mean by pressed for time? I always feel that I don't have enough time. When we feel pressed for time, used idiomatically, I feel I'm pressed for time. I don't have enough time. Yeah, so that's an expression we use. I'm pressed for time. Each day I have a long to-do list and each day gets harder and harder to fit everything in, to fit in. So fit everything into my working day. Excellent. The next one is to run out of time. Yeah, so a lot of you picked that out. I'm always running out of time. Now, running out of, we can use it also as a phrasal verb in other things. You run out of money, you run out of milk, you run out of water, you run out of energy. So you run out of time. So it's used in the same way, yeah, that you don't have enough of. So a lot of this here we're using is this concept of not having enough time. You set aside 2 hours. So we set aside is we're taking something and we're putting it to one side. Yeah, so another word is also allocating that time. So you set aside the time. So you set aside 2 hours of your day. You set aside 2 days to dedicate to a project or to a presentation. So you set aside the time. You then want to move on. Yeah, so I use the expression or the phrasal verb to move on. We move on to the next thing. So it's like giving a presentation. So I can say I can either complete the task. So if I've run out of time, I've set aside the 2 hours, but I've run out of time. So I have a choice. I can either complete the task or move on to the next task. So you're moving on to the next thing. Yeah, so you choose to go to start something new. Move on to. Yeah, we use also that phrasal verb a lot when we're talking about presentations. You're moving on to the next point, moving on to the next subject, moving on to the next topic. If you're changing the subject or you want to move on to the next slide. Same thing to move on to the next task. So you move on to the next item on your to-do list and you free up some space later. So imagine you're looking at your diary and you are looking at your schedule and you free up some space. So I'm going to free up some space, free up some time to do something. Yeah? Hi Marina, lovely to see you. Thank you for joining today's class. Yeah, so you're going to free up. So some of you picked that up. So great, very nice. Free up some space late in the day or the week to complete the earlier task. Gabriela, you're saying move on. I'm not too sure what you're saying in that chat bit. If you could just explain a bit more, that'd be great. So you free up time. You free up space. Yeah, so freeing up, again, used idiomatically. You free up some time. You then also can block out the time, can't you? You free up or you block it. Yeah, if I free up, so I've got a busy schedule and I'm going to free it up. But in your schedule, you can also block the time out. If you imagine you're using a scheduling tool, or you just block it out on your diary. So say, for example, if you have an assistant and they say, I'm going to block that out. So it's busy. You know, you mark it busy. You've blocked the time out. So block it out. Another phrasal verb. So you block it out. So another word we can use instead of phrasal verb would be to reserve that spot. You reserve that space. You reserve that time. You block it. Great. So that's a lovely one. Now, some of you didn't see this because I think I put a couple of sneaky phrasal verbs in here. Of course, if the task is urgent, for example, I have to prepare a presentation that's coming up soon. So something is coming up. We talk about, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt here because Roger said block out booked for later use. Yes, you block the time. It could be blocking it, yes, for later use, or blocking it out to inform someone that you are not available. So you can block out that time and for future use, or you're also blocking it out so that nobody can book that time for you. Yeah, so it can be used in both ways, right? But the idea is the same. You're blocking time out to do a job that you've delayed, or that you need to set aside and concentrate on. Good, great one, Raj. Excellent. So something is coming up soon. Coming up. So if something is coming up, it is going to happen. Yeah. So you could have an event coming up or a presentation coming up. Yeah. So if I have something coming up, I need to prepare for it. So again, we're thinking about time. Yeah, the concept of time. Something is coming up in my diary. I've got a presentation coming up in 2 weeks, and I need to work on it. Something is coming up to arise. Okay, arise we don't use as a verb, to arise. Something is coming up is something is happening. Something, when we talk about something is coming up, something is happening. Arise is not actually a verb we use. We don't use it as a, to arise is not a verb. The verb would be the sun rises, but it's different. I'll have to talk about that separately, Susan. But yes, it's not quite the right verb there. It's happening is more natural. It's the better synonym to use for coming up. So if something is coming up, so it's happening in the future, in the next few days, the next few weeks, in a month, whatever it's doing, you then might have to put back your other tasks. So when we put back, is a synonym with it would be to delay another task. So say you've organized to do a series of things in the week, and then your boss or your colleague says, look, we've just booked an event, or we've booked a meeting with these clients, these important clients, and we've booked it for next week. So we are going to need to prepare for that. So this event is coming up, this meeting is coming up, so you need to put back or delay or postpone, as Parth has said, whatever you've decided to do this week. You've got to postpone it. You've got to put it back, delay it, do it another time. Yeah, so we put back the other tasks. The other phrasal verb I've got is, sorry, I'm just interrupting because Gabriela said come out doesn't mean to appear. No, not come out, come up. Suddenly something came up. Something happened. Yes, different, yeah, something came up, something happened. So it's come up, not come out. So something came up and now we need to do this. Now we need to think. So something happened. So when something came up, something happened. Something is coming up, something is happening soon. Exactly the same. Yes, you're right, Gabi. But not come out. No, that's a different phrasal verb, different meaning. So I know it's very confusing with these phrasal verbs, but coming up means happening. So if you can understand something is coming up, something is happening, then you know that's the phrasal verb to use. The key here, this is one of the sentences I gave you, was the key is always to know how to prioritize. In fact, leading up to an important deadline, so something leads up to, so the time leading up to something means it's an important thing. Yeah, so when you've got an event that's happening, and so the leading up, the time leading up to it is important. There's a lot that you have to work on. Yeah, so you have to do that. So you need to work on it. Sorry, this is my husband's phone, but we will ignore it. I can't put it on silent, unfortunately. Right, so so that's leading up to something, which means that something is happening, or the time that is leading up to it, you need to do certain things. And so this is the key to tell me how to prioritize. In fact, leading up to an important deadline, so you know that something is coming up, so leading up to it, I have to space out my tasks to give myself sufficient time to meet this deadline. So when I space it out, it means that I'm going to give myself plenty of time. Yeah, so where I thought maybe this task is going to take me 2 hours, this time I'm going to give myself 4 hours, double the time. So I space it out in my diary because I need to have it. I'm not blocking it out, I'm spacing it out. So it's slightly different. You could also block it out, but there are two separate things you're doing here. You're spacing it out. So you're giving yourself plenty of time. You're giving yourself space. Space out. So that's what we're looking at. Of course, when you concentrate so much on this one subject and you've gone and put back other tasks, it means that you fall behind with your other task. So the other phrasal verb I had was fall behind. So which means you are late. When you fall behind means that you're late with something. Yeah, so if you fall behind on something means you now have to catch up with. Yeah, so these are two tricky phrasal verbs because often clients go, I don't quite understand. So you fall behind on something. So we fall behind with our work, with certain projects because you were so busy working on something. Yeah, and this happens a lot in our world of business, doesn't it? Because something else comes up and you have to work on that. So you put aside, you put back your other tasks. But then what happens is you fall behind on those other tasks. And now you have to catch up with a lot of work. Fall behind is like lagging behind. It's a very good question, Raj. No, you can fall lagging behind. Lagging behind has a concept that you're competing with someone else. If you're lagging behind, it's often when you're being compared to somebody else. You know, I'm lagging behind the top performers. Yeah, so you are then looking at each other and you're lagging behind. So imagine you're in a race. So there are two competitors and the second competitor is lagging behind the top athlete. So that's where you're looking at competition. You're looking at comparing yourself to someone else. If you're falling behind with your work or with a project, you're not necessarily competing with someone else. You are just late on on things. Yeah. So lagging behind has a sense of competition. And so if they're lagging behind, all right, compared to whom? Yeah. So I hope you know. So I want you to see, so there's a slight difference in meaning. If I'm falling behind, I'm only competing with myself because I set myself all these tasks, and now I'm falling behind on that work, and I need to catch up. Yeah. So those two phrasal verbs, fall behind and catch up, often get used together. I'm glad that makes sense, Raj. Great. So here we go. You fall behind, and then you have to catch up with a lot of work. So that means that you've got to work long hours, because not only are you working on that project, you now have to also work on all the other tasks that you have to catch up with. And that's why I'm saying, sometimes you end up working very long hours to do both things. You're tired, you're exhausted. Exactly, Raj. So what you then need to do is you have to catch up, and then you have to decide, okay, I need to manage my schedule much better. So in addition to allocating all these time slots, what I said was I try very hard not to drag out the time I spent on each task. To drag out. So if you think about the verb to drag. Now, the literal verb to drag is we drag something along the ground. When we walk sometimes, if we don't lift our feet, you're dragging your feet. So it's dragging against the ground. You can drag your suitcase if it's too heavy. You can drag, so something is, it's really heavy and you're dragging it. Now, drag out is used idiomatically here where you're dragging out the time. You could be dragging out the time because you're enjoying it, so you don't want that moment to end. Or you are procrastinating because you really don't want, you're finding it really difficult to do a particular job. So you get sidetracked, you get distracted, you go onto social media, you answer your emails, you're just not focused. So the time drags out, you drag that time out to longer than you need to. Yeah, so there you need to be, again, time management. You want to be more productive. You're spending too much time on something. Exactly, Path. Yeah, you're dragging it out. Not good, not productive. You're extending it. Exactly, you're extending it for too long. Exactly, Susan. So you need to say to yourself, I'm going to set myself these time slots, right? Like I said, so I set out my time and I go, okay, it's going to take me 2 hours. I'm sure this will take enough time. I don't need more. Of course, it depends on the jobs we're doing, right? There could be some things where you need more than that. Maybe you were too ambitious giving yourself 2 hours to do a job, because maybe it requires more of your time. Maybe you need to do more research. Maybe you need to have plenty of thinking time. Maybe you have to have more time to write. Who knows? There are all sorts of reasons why you have it. On the other hand, there could be something that's very, very simple, but because sometimes it could be mundane or it's a task you don't really want to do. So then we start dragging that time. Oh no, Nilmini, are you finding that the lesson is dragging out? Am I dragging out this lesson? I am so sorry. I will make it much quicker. Okay, so that, time is of the essence. You are right. I will not drag out this lesson any longer than it needs to be. Thank you for telling me, Nilmini. Right, so there you go. So we don't want to drag the time out. So that means that often we need to resist perfection. We need to decide, okay, I'm just going to spend, however long it's going to take. And once it's done, it's done. It could be better, it could be doing, but I'm going to just get on with it. Because otherwise, you'll find that your time just slips away. Yeah, we were talking about that, right? Time slips away, and before you know it, it's the end of the day, it's the end of the week, or you're into Wednesday already, and you're thinking, I just spent too much time on this. I must stop. So time starts slipping away. And finally, you think, right, okay, if you are lucky and you've got people who, you've got plenty of time to dedicate to a project, wonderful. but more often than not, you need to press on and get on with it and just move on. Let's press on. Let's move on quickly to the next thing. Yeah, so let's press on with the job in hand. And we use that expression also, for example, in meetings. Say, for example, you're in a business meeting and everyone's been discussing items on the agenda, and after a while the chairperson says, okay, come on, let's press on. Yeah, okay, we've wasted enough time on this point. Let's press on. We're pressed for time. We don't have enough time. Let's get on with it. Naomi, you're saying, sorry, I just wanted to use that word. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I was beginning to worry, but but good point. I'm glad you shared that, because maybe deep down you were trying to say to me, Shanti, this lesson is dragging on. Yeah, not dragging out. Maybe I am dragging out the lesson, but it's also dragging on far too long. It's going on for too long. Great. Excellent. But thank you for reminding me. Yes. So if you say we don't want to drag out our time because time is slipping away, so we need to then press on with the job in hand, with the job that we're doing. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we have it, 16 phrasal verbs. Some of you got 14 out of 16. Wonderful. So let me recap, and I'm just going to give you a list of the 16 phrasal verbs. We had pressed for time, fit in. So you want to fit something in. You want to run out of time. Or you don't want to run out of time, but you could be running out of time. You need to set aside some time. Set the time out. You want to move on. Yeah. So if you've spent too much time on something, you need to move on to the next item, to move on to the next task. You need to free up some time. Yeah, you need to free up your time to do something that you want to. Maybe you're spending too much time on something. I need to free up more time to concentrate on my English, or whatever you need to do. You are going to block out that time for whatever reason. You need to block it out, maybe for your assistant to know that you're busy then. Or you're going to block that time out in your diary and dedicate that time to that task. Something is coming up. Yeah, so something is happening, an event, a presentation, a meeting. So something is coming up and you need to now focus on that meeting that's coming up. And so you know that event is coming up, so that leading up to that event, you need to spend that time. So you need to spend the time leading up to that event on the project. Yeah, so you imagine you've got a fixed time, and the time leading up to it is when you need to concentrate on the project and focus on the task. Which means also that you have to space out some of that time that you're going to dedicate to that project. Yeah, so space out, give yourself enough time so that you can complete everything you need for that deadline. And then what happens, of course, inevitably is that when we focus so much on a particular project, we fall behind with our other tasks. Yeah, something's got to give, right? Something's got to, you've got to balance it, so some have to be dropped so you can focus on this, which means you fall behind. So then you need to catch up with the tasks that you were not able to do. So that's when you catch up with. Then when you want to be focused, you want to be productive, you want to get everything done. So then you decide, all right, finish with that project. Now I'm going to work on all these tasks that I'm behind with. And now I'm going to make sure with every task I'm going to do, I'm not going to drag out the time. Yeah. So you're going to drag out that. You don't want to drag out the time. So you're going to be very disciplined in how much time you spend on each thing, particularly the mundane tasks, because before you know it, time slips away, right? We're already at the end of February. I can't believe it. So time slips away. So if it slips away, time is precious, so you need to press on to the next thing. So ladies and gentlemen, no doubt you need to press on to the next item on your agenda this morning, this afternoon, this evening, or maybe you're pressed for time and you need to go to bed. Now, to answer Rosie's question, and I'm beginning to worry whether she was actually listening to this class, is the question was, are the flowers behind me real? Yes, they are. Now, the flowers behind are not red. They are sort of a pinkish red, if that answers your question. But now, come on, Rosie, were you paying attention to this lesson? Or was I dragging it out for too long and you lost complete focus on it? That can happen. I have a tendency of doing that sometimes with my poor clients, but there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I hope that was helpful, looking at these 16 phrasal verbs. I will share with you the link that I wrote, the weekly lesson I wrote on the post, and also share with you the 16 phrasal verbs in the show notes for this lesson. So we have come to the end of the theme that on time management. We will be talking about it, of course, during the course of the year. For next month's theme, we're going to be looking at vocabulary, business vocabulary, and more importantly, the business vocabulary, how to develop your business vocabulary. In what I'm going to be looking at is in the business news. You're business professionals, so developing your vocabulary using business news, looking at headlines. How do you understand headlines when you're reading newspapers online or in print? So I'm going to be looking at that. So that next month's topic and theme is going to be all about business vocabulary, how to develop your business vocabulary, looking at the business news and looking at buzzwords and business jargon. So I hope you'll stay with me. That's what we're going to be looking at. Thank you so much for joining me. Nilmina, I'm so glad you loved the lessons. Keiko, thank you so much for joining the lessons, taking your time out, your precious time out to listen to this lesson. If you like this lesson, please share the words with your friends. Tell them to come on over. They can always catch the recording if they can't. And then we will be, and to join the EWAT community through joining my blog or becoming a subscriber to the EWAT community. So go on to EnglishWithATwist.com and join it, because there's so much more that we can share with each other. But in the meantime, thank you so much. Enjoy the last day of February. Enjoying March in the winter. It's not quite spring, but thank you for your time. And we will start next week. Next week is, what are we looking at? Please help me here. We are looking at the 6th of March. What are we looking at? The week on, oh gosh, I completely gone blank on my days. So next week is can someone please help me? We are going to be looking 7th of March. See you next week, Wednesday, the 7th of March. I went completely blank on what the date was going to be for business vocabulary. So that's the theme for next week. Business news, business vocabulary, how you can build your vocabulary using the business news. That's the only way you're going to develop your business vocabulary for your work. So stay tuned. Join me then. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for watching Lesson 57. See you next week. This is me, Shanti Kumaraswamy Street from English with a Twist, saying ciao for now. Take care, guys. Take care. Bye.